Now, this is the Oz report for May 18th, 2024, and I'll start with the typical dashboard here. One thing, since I haven't done an Oz report in 4 weeks, one thing we haven't talked about is obviously the expansion. One big effect that this has had is that we're seeing very cheap ramen materials here. They're at about, the price index is at 100, and that means that it's at 52-week average. It's been a lot higher recently because production numbers have been high, but raw materials have been dropping rather sharply for a few weeks because of the looming introduction of passive moon mining, and so that's one big change that we are seeing here. Another is that Plex is up another 1.8%. So Plex right now trading 11% over 52-week average, rather expensive. And skill extractors are up 1.8%. So after another sale, they are climbing back up to their old price. They're not quite at it yet. We can look at that in the graph in a second here, but they are certainly climbing. And it's become very, very clear that skill extractors in the current economy, they will always bounce back. So typically, if you have a large skill extractor sale, you really can't go wrong in buying and buying them. And that's, it's, for me, over the past 2 years, it's been the most profitable item in EVE Online. Skill extractors with massive sales is a fantastic combination. Speaking of massive sales, we had the Hypercore sale a few weeks ago, and for this I'm actually going to jump into the client because let's have a look here at the Hypercores. What I'm talking about is the March sale, and you can see that it was a 50% off sale. It dropped down so much, and at this point we were wondering, okay, the amount that was bought during that time was so massive that I also doubted that it would recover anytime soon. 2 months down the line, we are already seeing a clear recovery here, especially in the last few weeks. So hypercores are recovering. There is demand. Clearly, there's speculation going on, right? Because the amount traded is much, much higher than anything we've seen in the past in the daily rate. And certainly there isn't significantly more hyper net activity going on. So hypercores continue to be a speculative good. It's still probably a good buy at whatever it's at, 375,000. And it's going to have its slow climb back up to 500,000. This is not a good that CCP has traditionally had a lot of massive sales on. So, CCP is probably gathering information on this. Depending on how well this sale did financially for CCP, we might see it back on the horizon. I wouldn't expect there to be another sale in the next 6 months, though. So overall, interesting. Just don't use them. Just don't use them on the hypernet. I really, really hate the hypernet, and I don't think it should be in the game. But it's fine to speculate with them. All right. Now, other than that, let's look at really quickly the skill extractor graph here. This is what I was talking about earlier. So we've seen a lot of sales. All right, a lot of sales on skill extractors. Overall, though, it's always bounced back, and this is what I was talking about earlier. We are now on skill extractors at back around 500 million. This had to be, this was the equilibrium for a long time, or a relative equilibrium. So 500 million is as good a station as or a park price as any. Before this last sale, we did see 550 million though, so that's not unheard of. That all depends on the skill farming formula that I typically show here. So let me do that. Right now, not taking advantage of any sales on skill farming, you're going to make 900 million profit per account per month. All right. So right now, it is profitable to skill farm if you're taking advantage of sales, of specific sales in the New Eden store going on. then you're going to have even more profit. So right now, this is profitable. This means that typically we should see downward pressure on large skill injectors. However, I've said that on multiple occasions. Just because it should be, that's not what we're seeing. You can see here large skill injectors continue to be getting more expensive. That means that skill farmers are not meeting even though there's lots of them, they're not meeting the demand that is there for large skill injectors. And typically what we're seeing on expansion time is an increase on large skill injectors, because we are going to see people wanting to, jump back in, get back to what they were doing, catching up to their friends, flying new ships. And for all of that, you might use large skill injectors if you have the liquid ISK or a credit card. And so in the end, I don't see large skill injectors going down, and that means the skill farming equation is going to be rather positive. What that means also is typically that drives the Plex price up, because you need a lot of Plex for skill farming, and it's one of those. It's one of the big demand drivers for Plex. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there, but right now there's no reason. I don't see a reason why in the near future large skill injectors should be going down, and probably this also means that we're going to see increased demand for skill extractors, and probably 500 million is not the end of the road for skill extractors either. Let's look at some of the other categories. Specifically, let's spend really quickly talk about master-arm cerebral accelerators, okay? So these have finally started to drop back down. If you haven't, I mean, the last Oz report is probably like 4 weeks ago due to my vacation, but I've been preaching that master-arm cerebral accelerators are way too expensive, because if you look at the alternative that you have, that is your New Eden Store Specialist Boost Cerebral Accelerators and Genius Boost Cerebral Accelerators, their cost per SP is much lower than a master-arm cerebral accelerator, and they're more convenient. So economically speaking, nobody should be buying master-arm cerebral accelerators at all. You should be buying Plex and using that to buy these cerebral accelerators. However, people don't have perfect information. People have habits, and so in the end, there seems to still be a demand for master-arm cerebral accelerators, and we're going to continue to see that until either Plex price goes high enough to price these boost cerebral accelerators out, or master-arm cerebral accelerators are going to drop in price. So let's see what comes first. Let's go back to the client. So let's talk about short supply. Let's talk about things that are currently in short supply in EVE Online. Incidentally, the Macarial, if you look at how many Macarials are available here, there's only probably about 20 of them available. 25 are traded every day, so Macarials are in very short supply. Same with Orcas, incidentally, and also with Stormbringers. So quite a few ships there on that list. Also, Neurovisual Input Matrix. This is ancient salvage material from sleeper sites, so from wormhole space, and they've hit a 52-week high here, and that is possibly tied. I'm guessing tied to the war in wormholes, making sleeper ratting more expensive, more risky, and so possibly tied to that. We are definitely not a time to buy these. Maybe wait a few weeks with that war being over. Maybe that's going to actually come down at some point. If we're looking at stuff that is trending down, among other things, the octator and the viator are going down. They're the most popular deep space transport and blockade runners. Possibly this has to do with the announcement that we recently saw of the new Upwell ships that are definitely going to give these a run for their money. So possibly people anticipating a lower demand. Again, don't get caught up on ship prices based on popularity. The prices of ships typically don't have anything to do with popularity, only in the short run. The only way you're going to see changes in ship pricing is if their bill of material changes, because everything else is just going to even out in the long run. So don't speculate on Octator or Viator or other ships being more or less popular. Only ever speculate on their bill of material changing or the availability of minerals in their bill of material changing, right? Let's have a look at underpriced. So theoretically underpriced. What's trading under 52-week average? We have armor plates here, for example. All right. This I typically don't answer chat, right? But Higher Brand is saying popularity affects volume. Oddly enough, it does, but it does not. An individual ship's popularity does not have a huge impact on the raw material availability. All right. So the only way that the popularity of a ship would impact ship prices in the long run if it caused a bottleneck in its components. All right. A popularity of a tier 1 ship is never going to have an impact on the availability of certain minerals. So it will never be more expensive because it's more popular, right? So that is just something you have to keep in mind. Surely, if a specific group of ships that use a specific component are more popular as a group and therefore increase the demand of a certain group of components, then it could have a long-lasting impact on the actual pricing of this ship group, but probably not individuals. And Hirebrand is saying he was talking about the volume of that ship sales only. Certainly, the volume of that ship is going to be impacted by popularity. Certainly, actually, it's probably the measure of its popularity. Intact armor plates, incidentally, way underpriced or way under 52-week average right now. So that's actually probably a very good investment right now. The intact armor plates, it looks very juicy to me. Other than that, Agency Paralencia Dose 1, we talked about this early on stream. The time where you were able to capitalize from these event drops are probably over. I don't, certainly I'm doing my part to shed a light on these investment strategies, and it's no secret anymore that agency drugs during events or even Society of Conscious Thought ships now during Capsuleer Day, it's not a secret anymore, and there's too many investors actually buying up all of these ships during their temporary oversupply, and so you can make if 5, 10, maybe even 15% profit, but not much more than that. Speaking of which, if we look at Gnosis pricing, for example, Gnosis during this Capsuleer Day went down from about 42.5 to around just under 40. So that's not big. Even Praxis pricing. Praxis was just so popular that it was very expensive before Capsuleer Day, and now it has dropped down, but there's enough people buying up all of the buy orders that again, 10-20% not more, and Sunesis is about the same. Something that we are seeing is 0-point field manipulators just absolutely had their bottom ripped out under them. This is the main component in T2 Triglavian ships. I've mentioned this before. They are just below 200K right now. That is historically extremely cheap. This is from Triglavian content, be it in Pochven, or probably mostly in Pochven. And so, this is pretty serious. It's had significant impacts on Iketursa prices, for example, as you can see here, going down from 500 million to about 400 million. Le Chac's not so much because the Le Chac has a ton of other materials as well. But the Nurgle, for example, we're seeing the same thing. And as Stinson says in chat, yes, they did nerf the ships, but it's, if you look at the Iketursa, for example, in terms of volume, it's not like the volume is completely gone on the Iketursa, right? It's not like nobody is flying these anymore. So the nerf was rather small compared to I think what people make of it. So certainly fewer Iketursas and Abyssals, but overall is And thank you, Dulcatos, for correcting me on the Le Chac. The Le Chac is a tier 1 ship indeed, not a tier 2. All right. Yeah, I think we'll leave it at that for the Oz report for today, May 18th, and I will see you guys next week, and we'll return to the regular stream.